Following the conclusion of World War II, the Nazis were on the run as their efforts crumbled and Berlin burned. Those who survived cut deals, went underground, or defected to places like Argentina, where they were more or less protected from the consequences of the war. However, depending on who you ask, the Third Reich's leadership was not so lucky. Hitler's demise at the Führer bunker is well documented, but there are conflicting reports about what became of his inner circle. A particularly colorful story directly concerns Martin Bormann, Hitler's personal secretary, the Nazi Party chancellor, one of his closest allies. The veracity of this tale is a matter that's been debated for decades. But one thing is for sure. If it is true, then one of the most interesting stories of World War II has been largely kept under wraps for a long, long time. Before we start peeling back the layers of this story, let's talk about the man at the center of it all, Martin Bormann. Born in the Kingdom of Prussia, Bormann left his agricultural trade school to join the German Army's 55th Field Artillery Regiment during the closing months of World War I, where he served as a gunner. He never saw combat in this role. Several years later, he first joined an anti-Semitic landowners association, and then the Freikorps, a German paramilitary outfit built on nationalism and quelling uprisings that grew out of political instability after World War I. During his time with the Freikorps, Bormann played a role in the political murder of German schoolteacher Walter Kato, a member of the Völkisch Freedom Party, who was accused of revealing plans to sabotage French industrial efforts in the Ruhr district of Germany. Bormann spent a year in jail for his crimes, but he and everyone involved would later receive commendations from the Nazis for their loyalty to Germany. Martin Bormann's direct involvement with the Nazi Party began when he joined in 1927, 2 years after being released from jail. Having spent his life up to that point developing a reputation for ruthlessness, violence, and extreme nationalistic tendencies, he was welcomed with open arms. By 1933, Bormann had involved himself with enough policy and decision-making within the party that Hitler named him Reichsleiter, the second highest rank of the Nazi Party. Through calculated manipulation of Hitler's eccentricities and facilitating party infighting, Bormann was firmly ingrained in Hitler's inner circle within a year. From that point, Bormann followed the Führer everywhere. He oversaw renovations of his Obersalzberg residence, managed his personal finances, decided his appointments, and ultimately controlled direct access to him. By all accounts, Martin Bormann was Hitler's personal secretary, and by extension, one of the most powerful members of the Nazi Party. Recognizing his status within the party, many began to refer to Bormann as the Brown Eminence, Hitler's shadow. So then, when it all came crashing down, where exactly was this shadow? For someone so calculated and loyal to the Führer, why weren't Martin Bormann's remains found next to Hitler's own? Why were Bormann's remains nowhere to be found, for that matter? As it turns out, he might not have been all that loyal in the first place. Some historians have discovered coded messages sent out by Bormann in Hitler's last days. It seems that he could see the writing on the wall and wasn't very interested in going down with this particular ship. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. While historian Dr. Mark Felton has uncovered evidence that Bormann potentially laid plans to escape the Führer bunker to join up with Nazi leadership elsewhere, and may have even played a role in Hitler's death, there's also an assertion that Bormann's escape was facilitated by an extremely unlikely party, the British. The story goes that British intelligence put together a secret operation with the goal of extracting Bormann from Berlin in the midst of all the chaos at the request of Winston Churchill himself. Saving a Nazi figurehead might seem out of character for the famously anti-Nazi prime minister, but Churchill was also a shrewd strategist. With tensions already forming between the Allies and the Soviets rising as the next potential threat, Churchill wanted an ace in the hole, an advantage he could use to get a leg up in whatever the next conflict might be. Martin Bormann was that advantage. Due to his laundry list of responsibilities and proximity to the Führer, it was no secret that Bormann knew everything. Secret dealings, intelligence networks, even Nazi sympathizers around the globe. However, perhaps most importantly, Bormann was the only Nazi official who had access to the party's immense wealth. While no doubt information would have been extremely valuable, Churchill and British intelligence were hoping to bolster their own reserves with the gold bullion the Nazis had been squirreling away in Swiss bank accounts. In order to get their hands on it, they needed to plan and execute a clandestine operation to extract an enemy asset flawlessly. To pull that off, they turned to Commander Ian Lancaster Fleming. If that name sounds familiar to you, maybe this will jog your memory. Long before he was the author of James Bond novels, Ian Fleming was a decorated British naval intelligence officer, responsible for numerous successful operations during World War II, including Operation Ruthless, Operation GoldenEye, which would become the namesake of one of the most popular Bond films many years later, and the operation in question, if the story is to be believed. Allegedly included in the coded messages sent out by Bormann was correspondence with Desmond Morton, a high-ranking member of Winston Churchill's cabinet, as well as his private secretary. Those messages reveal that both Bormann and Morton agreed to create a plan that would remove Bormann from Berlin in exchange for the transferal of the Nazis' vast wealth. Fleming operated under Morton at the time and was therefore directed to create and lead the plan. So, under Fleming's leadership and with the approval of Franklin Roosevelt, Lord Louis Mountbatten, and King George VI, as well as Winston Churchill, the operation was carried out. After potentially months of training and studying a scale model of Berlin and the waterways that go through and around it, Fleming and a team of British commandos parachuted into the German capital and took shelter in a safe house. All the while, Soviet forces slowly but surely pushed their way toward Hitler's bunker. From there, they traveled by kayak to their next waypoint, where they waited for word from Bormann for 3 days. On April 30th, Hitler's secretary arrived in secret to inform them that the war was essentially over. Hitler was dead. The following day, Bormann fell in with the commandos and moved toward their extraction point by kayak under cover of night. Thanks to the commandos and a fortunate avoidance of Russian opposition, Bormann was safely delivered into Allied hands. However, the strangest and most controversial events were the ones that followed the rescue mission. The British didn't just save Bormann from his fate by removing him from Berlin, they also protected him. According to the account of the operation, Martin Bormann was given an entirely new identity, going so far as to provide him with plastic surgery, voice retraining, and a new name: Herr Martin Schuler. As Schuler, Bormann was able to wholly avoid punishment. Instead, he became a respected figure in his local community and worked at a horse riding school for girls in a small English village until his death in 1989. During the Nuremberg trials, Martin Bormann was sentenced to death in absentia. Now, is all this information an established matter of historical record? Absolutely not. The circumstances surrounding Martin Bormann's demise are widely contested to this day. This tale of Bormann's escape and reinvention comes from the book Op. J.B., a supposedly historically accurate retelling of an operation so top secret, no evidence of it has turned up since the end of the war. The author, John Ainsworth Davis, going under the pseudonym Christopher Creighton, swears to the legitimacy of all of the information as someone who participated in the operation. While there's a lot of truth to be found in the book, as well as allegedly official letters and notes from Winston Churchill, Ian Fleming, and others, there's also a lot of information that can't be verified. Unfortunately for Ainsworth Davis, some of the sources that he claims were lost to time and the fog of war are also the most fantastical. The name of the operation itself also doesn't help his case. Op. J.B., or Operation James Bond, is supposed to be a nod to the future works of Ian Fleming, the real British intelligence officer who allegedly planned the whole thing. The problem was, he wouldn't even write his first book until 1952. 7 years after the operation allegedly took place. Because of the absence of Bormann's corpse and flimsy attempts at confirming his death, this story has taken hold in the minds and imaginations of some since the publishing of Op. J.B. in 1996. Its validity is still debated among experts, and the overall perception of Operation James Bond in the current age is that of a conspiracy theory. But then again, it also hasn't been completely disproven, and who knows how many secret operations were carried out behind the scenes during World War II. As they say, stranger things have happened.